Pokemon Legends ZA is on the horizon, and it looks like a nice new take on Kalos, bringing in a fresh way of battling.
You know, I'm something of a myself.
You have my full attention. I am all in on this baby with the real-time battling. You know, maybe I should do some brushing up. Go back and play the original Kalos games in X and Y. This was a mistake. Pokemon games are usually pretty milquetoast. You understand what you're getting into. You probably won't put the game down thinking it was some magnum opus of gaming, or that it's some abject horror show. But for me, all of my hating energy goes not to the absurd level curves of Gold and Silver, not to the bizarre pacing of Diamond and Pearl, not to the wasteful cutscenes of Sun and Moon, not even to the broken glitchiness of Scarlet and Violet. It goes to Pokemon X and Y, released for the Nintendo 3DS in 2013. We're gonna go through all the reasoning. Some of them common critiques, others more personal preference to try to piece together the hater inside of me. And so I present unto you my hater manifesto for Pokemon X and Y. Let's start with the home run hit right off the bat. The nice rivals. I'm not gonna get the Oxford Dictionary out for the word rival because it doesn't matter. I am not asking for characters to fit a strict definition of what should or should not be a rival in a Pokemon game. I am simply asking for characters. I will use the term rival strictly to convey the set of Pokemon characters that are colloquially designated as such. The general setup X and Y has for rivals is perfectly fine. We get to travel the region alongside not 1, not 2, not 3,
not 5, not 6, not 7,
but 4 good buddies. At its premise, it can work very well where we meet up with the gang as a whole throughout different points of the journey, really feel that camaraderie, and also then have moments that isolate and develop each one individually. The issue is, in practice, the writers now have more mouths to feed. It is easier for characters to get lost in the shuffle when there are so many to keep track of. Now, the writers are coming off a set of games where they did 2 rivals better than 1. But 4? That's asking a lot, man. Not only does the gang have to present some unique bond as a unit, but each individual member of the gang also has to hold their own. Do they? No. Unfortunately, this gang is a proper gang of goofs. We'll sort them into 3 categories: tolerable, pointless, and should be exiled to the depths of the distortion world. Let's start with tolerable, where we find Shauna. Shauna can certainly come off as annoying. She meets up with the player and talks with them a lot. She does also kind of hit on the player, which I'm not really looking for in a Pokemon game. So I understand why people find her annoying. But A, at least that's a character trait, and B, at least she is present enough to be annoying. A big thing Shauna has going for her is the Parfum Palace excursion early in the game. She gets isolated time to shine. She doesn't shine super bright, but there's a bit there. There's the setup that she likes puzzles, so you have the puzzle out in the garden to hunt down the Furfrou. It works out relatively well. As for Shauna's dialogue, even if it is generic, she does have some personality to her lines. It's neat that Shauna's dialogue when watching the fireworks is unchanged regardless of what gender of protagonist you play. She may be annoying, but at least she comes off as a sort of bubbly, upbeat friend that's just kind of there to vibe, which I honestly like. She may not have any goals, especially goals that would run against the player, but at least Shauna has character. I can at least ascribe words like spunky to her, even if I could not properly define what I mean with that word. Moving on to our next category, we have Tierno and Trevor. This pair has bits and pieces of personality, and you could put together some character traits for them, but they do not get any isolation time like Shauna to really dig any deeper. They do, however, present a nice opportunity to talk about goals. Neither Tierno nor Trevor are particularly interested in battling, but they do have tangible-ish goals. Trevor wants to collect Pokemon and fill out the Pokedex, basically being a professor's pet, while Tierno wants to assemble a Pokemon dancing team. Okay, Tierno's a bit odd, but the two at least have hopes and dreams. At least there are things that they want to achieve on their journey. The issue is not inherently that their goals don't oppose the player, but that I, as the player, cannot really see growth or tell when they make progress. How would you tangibly tell that Tierno is becoming a good Pokemon dancer or whatever if all you do is regularly battle him? Yeah, it's cool that his Pokemon have dancing moves, but I don't think his intent is battling. I can't really gauge. Whoa. Tierno, buddy, what is this? What am I looking at here? You realize you command the Pokemon, right? You can tell it to do the dance move. You don't have to explicitly strip away all possible inhibition to do anything else. You know that, right? Like, what on earth are we doing here, buddy? Trevor is in an even weirder spot where his goal of filling out the Pokedex is a goal the player could be doing and working towards themselves. But most players will ignore Pokemon that they don't like and not really care about filling the dex until maybe after they beat the game. Still, this is at least a tangible goal that Trevor can explain his progress on. Trevor does show his progress 3 times throughout the journey, one for each part of the Kalos Pokedex. And there are actual number thresholds for you to win or lose each time Trevor brings it up. It's all fine, but because it's Pokemon seen, not caught, the player can pretty easily one-up Trevor without caring about the Pokedex. In my playthrough, I lost to him the first time, tied with him the second time, and beat him the third time. That threshold for the second time was so weird that I thought he was scripted to beat you the first time, tie you the second time, and then lose to you the third time. But no, there are actual number thresholds. It's all well and good, and while it does make sense for Kalos to be split into the 3 parts and the 3 parts of the Pokedex, it does make it weird that Trevor's challenges then get kind of easier throughout the game because it's on the different sections. Like the last time the number you have to beat is 5 because you've only been through like 1 route with those Pokemon. And even then it's pretty easy to beat. It would have been nice if maybe he had an overall number towards the end in that like bridge scene or something. It is baffling to me that Trevor's goal is not trying to catch as many Pokemon as he can to complete the Pokedex. There's barely any information to gain if you just see the Pokemon. If Sycamore's whole thing is learning about the region and you want to be the professor's pet and do that stuff, catching them actually fills out the page. Not only would actually catching a ton of Pokemon be a more difficult goal for Trevor, but it could have been conveyed through player interaction through the team you see when you battle him. But when you fight him on Route 19, 6 badges into the game, Trevor only has 3 Pokemon. Sure, they're rare Pokemon, but if his goal is to complete the dex, it would be nice if I could see that goal coming to fruition through his team. Trevor could have had in-game mechanics show his goals, but they opt not to for whatever reason. Again, the issue Trevor and Tierno have is not that their goals are weird and don't involve being the champion, it's that their goals are untrackable and it feels like they're spinning their wheels. It's also like all they talk about. Yes, I can ascribe some character traits to them, but literally all they talk about is either completing the dex or dancing respectively. Like, have something else to say. Please! As far as that personality and character go, there's some of it, but Trevor and Tierno don't have any interesting one-on-one moments like Shauna at the palace. They are always bogged down by at least one accompanying character. There's no real deeper understanding of them or their motives, why they pick the goals they have. Like, Trevor has this one line, which is optional, and is just one line. Like, can you tell me what this Pokemon maybe looked like? Or anything about it? They set out with their goals. We don't know why they care about their goals. And then their goals don't change, and they just kind of are there. And now we move to what I consider the greatest atrocity of X and Y. Serena and Caleb. I do not have a problem with nice rivals. Hau and Hop are nice, but I can ascribe some personality to them. I do not have a problem with rivals who show up, battle, leave, and contribute nothing else. Blue and Barry just battle and leave, but I can ascribe some personality to them. I cannot ascribe personality to the literal pieces of cardboard that are presented as your primary X and Y rival. I don't know why I expected these to crumple. Starting from the top, Serena and Caleb's parents are both recognized battlers. As such, there are expectations that your main rival will be a good battler and have that drive to be the very best. Do we see their parents? No. Sucks. We eventually saw Barry's dad. We saw Hau's grandpa very early on. We saw Hop's brother very early on. We saw their inspirations at some point, but no, the expectations just come from characters that are off screen and that are never involved. A story about the rival dealing with lofty expectations and charting their own individual course would be great. That story is not here. Serena and Caleb are exceptionally bland. They just want to be good battlers. Determination, I guess, would be their character trait, if you are willing to call it one. But it's never really layered on anything. They're motivated to beat the player, and are then sad when they don't beat the player. It is so vanilla. They have basically no scenes in isolation that could have expanded on, living up to expectations or growing from repeated failure. Instead, when they don't show up just to battle you, they show up almost solely alongside the gang to spout exposition. Their dialogue, the way they speak, gives no insight into who they are. Their lines are almost one-to-one exactly the same for both Serena and Caleb. There's nothing even really to distinguish them. They don't feel like people. They feel like cardboard stand-ins. Here are lines from either Shauna or from Serena/Caleb when the player first meets them. You'll notice it's incredibly easy to figure out whose are Shauna's and which are Serena/Caleb's. And it's not because they show off two different personalities, it's because one set of lines feels like it came from a narrator. Serena and Caleb are also the ones that instigate the rivalry with you in the first place. Despite that, the first two times they battle are with you and not against you. You'd think that if they perceived me to be their competition, they would want to measure themselves against me, to battle me whenever they get the chance. But they don't. They have the opportunity multiple times, but it's just they just don't interact with me on that until almost the third badge. It's not that they're lacking in overall battles, they do pick up on the later portions of the game, but it's like if you're motivated to beat someone, wouldn't you want to get to that early? You want a neighbor that cares a ton about beating the player and dreams of one day overcoming them? Great. Here's Sharon. Sharon already did this, but better. And Sharon isn't even meant to be presented individually. He and Bianca are meant to be the yin and the yang, the black and the white. And yet, even standalone, Sharon far outclasses Serena and Caleb as that driven, motivated friend that wants to one day uproot the more successful player. Serena and Calum do come to that epiphany at the end of the game that it isn't just about strength and beating the player, that they don't need power and victory to stand out from other trainers. They also have like some completely baffling lines. And so after you beat them for a final time, they turn back on Victory Road to focus on the bond between them and their Pokémon. That's something that's come up quite a bit before, and it presents a bit of a problem. Serena and Calum are not bad people. They're nice, dedicated trainers. There's no real reason to believe that they don't have a strong bond with their Pokémon already. They just aren't as good as the soon-to-be literally best trainer in the region. Well, the next level of the bond between a trainer and their Pokémon is most directly related to Mega Evolution, which is honestly just raw strength that relates to winning anyway. So when Serena and Calum show up with Mega Evolution in the post-game, it doesn't really exemplify a better bond between them and their Pokémon, just the acquisition of a tool to bring out power that was already there. But we do get this little line. When we first set out on our journey, I thought it was really important how different I was from everyone else. But that doesn't matter, does it? Of course I'm different from others. I'm the only me. Finally! The literal last line of dialogue these jokers have in the entire game is the first thing to come out of their mouths with any actual substance. While a good realization and message, it unfortunately rings out super hollow. Sure, a character in a game should be able to stand out and be unique just by being themselves, but Serena and Calum utterly fail at doing so. They can't stand out in their own game because their personalities are so bland, and they can't stand out amongst all the other rivals in the franchise because there's nothing unique they bring to the table. Well, they were unique at the time for being the first rival that is seemingly always behind the player at every turn, and serve to tell you how good you are and how great you're doing, how strong your Pokemon are. Okay, look. The rival does not have to constantly be ahead of the player and be a jerk face about it like Blue. Blue talks down to you even after you beat him like 5+ times. He doesn't believe a hostage situation takes precedence over battling the player. Blue is so nonsensical sometimes, I understand why Pokemon has gone away from a rival that keeps trying to jump kick you in the face. Only to miss and land on his own face 8 times. But Blue serves a point. He is someone I want to show up with his cocky grin so I can curb stomp him into the pavement. He has a personality. That's all I'm really asking for. A bit of personality. Being nice is not an interesting enough personality on its own. There has to be more to it. You have to layer that on something. And Pokemon did do more with the nice archetype in future games with future rivals. But not for Serena or Calum. And when you're a bland personality lost in the shuffle of 3 other bland personalities, you don't even really get the dignity of becoming repugnant. You're just forgotten. Okay, you know what? That was a lot of negativity. So let's take a break with some slight positivity here. Lysander. For starters, Lysander's design, fantastic. No notes, 10 out of 10. For a region meant to be about fashion, I like the black suit with its sharp orange trim. Good contrast, nice and sleek. The collar fluff and ascot add a bit of gaudiness before exploding up into his vibrant orange hairdo and beard. It's a very nice design that suits his region and his over-the-top intentions well. Lysander's ultimate goal as the big boss man is to fire the ultimate weapon and wipe out 99.99% of the human population. His motives are that the world will always have the haves and the have-nots, hence creating conflict among humans. So to get rid of the conflict, we need to get rid of the humans. We need to maintain the world's intrinsic beauty.
I'm starting to think for the good of humanity, we might need to kill the boss.
His motives are brought up alongside the 3,000 year ago war, where in a war between 2 regions vying for resources, many humans and Pokemon died. That war is kind of the foundation for Lysander's belief that humans are inherently evil, that everything is driven to conflict, and that we ruin the world. but the war is so estranged from Lysander himself that he doesn't really garner any sympathy for his world-ending crusade. Or I guess human-ending, because look, the world is whatever. His ancestors may have had stakes in the war. He did not. Never-ending human conflict does not seem to directly impact Lysander's life in a meaningful way. There is nothing to really attribute Lysander's desire to wipe out humanity other than the fictional ideals in his head about what the world should or should not be. I'm not gonna sympathize with a world ender on any level in a Pokemon game. You want me to sympathize with someone that f***ed up? Great. Show me 10, 12 hours of cutscenes and maybe we'll get there. You know who I do sympathize with a bit though? AZ. Aside from playing center for the San Antonio Spurs, AZ is a key player in the war that is meant to rationalize Lysander's motivations. Kind of. In said war, AZ lost his beloved Floette, and even after bringing his treasured Pokemon back from the dead, he sought to end the war by any means necessary, and fired the ultimate weapon. A drastic measure that cost AZ what he truly cared for. He demonstrates how even well-meaning individuals can be corrupted by everlasting conflict and end up committing war crimes. Now, in the current day, AZ doesn't really do anything. He simply serves as exposition and the key to the ultimate weapon. I mean, if he's a dude given eternal life for thousands of years, I feel like we could have had, some stuff about what it means to live, what it means to die, but maybe that's too deep, so they'll get a pass on that one. AZ does not make any actual choices and is more a plot device than a character. That's still better than what Pokemon presents on average, but it's worth pointing out. AZ and the war don't really strengthen Lysander's motivations as much as it feels like the game wants them to. It is a trying task for a Pokemon game to try to convince me that Lysander is some well-intentioned but misguided person. His first two appearances, where he talks about his perfect world and everlasting beauty, are placed right after Sycamore tells you to, and I quote, accept the ways of living and thinking that sometimes conflict with your own. Lysander rings up the player often to continue yapping about his perfect world, but when it escalates to wiping out almost all of humanity, sorry, Professor, I gotta draw the line somewhere. It's nice that Lysander has dialogue, but he still wants to end the world, and the game feels like condescendingly righteous, trying to make Lysander seem rational, or like trying to get me to see his side of things when that never really happens, and shouldn't happen. Again, like Lysander didn't even lose anyone close to him for this ending conflict thing. It's someone from thousands of years ago. Like if he lost his wife or something, okay, maybe. Lysander's self-aggrandizing belief that he's doing good makes him more off-putting than just simple world-ending psychopaths like Cyrus who aren't tech billionaires, which seems to be the general trend of the modern villains as well. Lysander is still overall fine. These are kind of nitpicks given the kind of game Pokemon purports to be. His breakdown at the end is great though. That's what going into 3D should allow you to do more of. Let's move to a character who debuts speaking to Lysander in the Cafe Soleil scene. Sorry, I'm not gonna be able to pronounce those correctly. Diantha. And I hope you cherish that one scene because it's almost all she gets. Diantha is different from almost all champions up to this point in that she has no meaningful interaction with the player. Diantha and champions as a whole are not required to do a bunch of stuff and have a bunch of dialogue, but she's presented early on alongside an actually important character in Lysander. It's fair for the player to expect Diantha to play some interesting role when she just doesn't. She doesn't even show up after Lysander broadcasts to the entire region that he is committing a genocide. Strongest trainer in the region want to help out, do anything about that? No? We got Sin and Dexio instead? Literally no one else wants to help out? Okay. Diantha's just gonna say thank you when the 10-year-old who saved the world shows up? Okay. Now, Diantha being an actress and movie star serves to give her some substance outside of battling. But like Tierno, Diantha's hobby can't be actualized into anything. there can't be a point to it. The game can't do anything with that hobby other than just say she has it and make her look like she has it. What could you do in a Pokemon game to get across that someone is an actress? Not a Pokemon coordinator, contest person, whatever that is. Like, an actress. The real life occupation. There's the PR video studio, I guess, but Diantha has nothing to do with it. If you're gonna give a character an interesting part of their personality and who they are, make it worth something. Steven may like rocks, but I can tell he likes rocks because he studies the wall mural. Cynthia may like mythology, but I can tell she likes mythology because she shows up to the legendary nonsense. Their hobbies can be put into practice. Movie star cannot be put into practice in a Pokemon game. Okay, I mean, they kind of did it in one time. Okay, well, as an actress, Diantha is made to look like a fashion model in the game that centers a good bit on fashion. Can we put that into practice with story or game mechanics at all? This is the first game with character customization, so have Diantha show up in a different outfit each time you see her, culminating in her champion garb. Nope. Instead, Diantha always shows up in this. I think I'm in the minority on saying I do not like Diantha's design.
It's hideous, but beautiful in an ugly way.
She fits the regional aesthetic, but doesn't look important.
But mostly hideous.
Diantha goes for a similar sleek vibe that Lysander's suit goes for, except Lysander's outfit has a bit more pop with the orange on black. Diantha's outfit has gold on white, which is not nearly as eye-catching, especially on the limited screen size of a 3DS. Lysander also has his magnificent mane of hair, while Diantha, yes, her hairstyle is unique, but it doesn't feel unique. I'm not French, nor do I know anything about Parisian fashion, but Diantha's design just seems very bland. A ton of white with no real pop. Even Steven, showing up in his Sunday's best, has more than 2 colors on his clothes. I get that designer fashion isn't really in your face, and that something opulent like Iris's loose flowing dress wouldn't quite fit. There still has to be something more interesting to do here. Diantha's purse is just a basic pink designer purse. No interesting design or logo, no color palette to match her ace Pokemon. She wears this wing cape thing at the back, which is something unique, I guess, but it's still flat and white. She pales even in the face of someone like Wallace. While not a model, Wallace also goes for a sleek, fashionable aesthetic, but there are blues and greens that add some vibrance, add some layers. Like, I don't like what Diantha's doing here. Now, X and Y do have themes of individuality and uniqueness, so maybe the idea is that even the most special trainer of the game doesn't look special. I can buy that, but Diantha still ends up being just boring, with nothing for her to do for the entirety of the game. Okay, buddy, cool stuff about characters, story, plot. But we don't play Pokemon games for story. What do you think we are? Literate? Okay, fair point. Pokemon games are fun, monster collecting games where you go on an epic adventure with said monsters. That adventure should still feel unique, especially with there being 9 other ways to do it. And if it's not unique from the people you meet, it's gotta do so in another way. So let's talk about the actual adventure and what Kalos does for that. As a premise, Kalos' regional design is pretty cool, having this one central city in Lumiose that then spurs out to various routes and outer towns shaped like a 5-pointed star. Lumiose can act as a sort of home base that you constantly revisit throughout the course of the game and see more of as you go along. And all those branched out towns can be unique, like Beach Town, Snow Towns, Stone Ruins. All those other towns are very nice, varied, have some cool stuff going on. My issue is mostly with the central core that is Lumiose. As you travel through the Kalos region, you'll be forced into Lumiose 3 times on your way to getting all 8 badges, or stopping Team Flare. If Lumios is to act as this central pillar of the region, it would be cool if revisiting the city felt interesting, but it overall just does not. When you first visit, you only have access to the South Boulevard, and there are some things to do. Nothing terribly exciting, but hey, things are things. And then when you get to Lumios the second time, the power is back on, and you can actually explore the entire thing. Makes sense to have the city expand with the player. Again, at a concept level, this is very impressive to have this big, sprawling city to go explore and roller skate all over in. To have the different camera angles swooshing behind the player that isn't just the typical top-down. It's all good, but for me, the luster wears off once you look for things to actually do. So let's take a look at what all you can actually do in Lumios. Okay, well, getting to Prison Tower, having it light up, the site of the 5th gym, that's cool. What else is there? Almost every other place of interest is a shop, cafe, or restaurant.
You blew it, you jerk!
That fits with the Paris inspiration, but it also makes Lumios feel like less of a destination. There's plenty to do, but nothing unique to look forward to, like, hooray, I can visit a 20th new cafe that definitely serves some purpose, where I can, at least maybe get a useless espresso item or something. Right? Lumios is usually just a connection point to the place I actually want to go, rather than a vibrant city I want to stay and look around in. It could have used some more interesting locales similar to maybe Nimbasa City. Sure, things like the stadium and theater are glorified battles, but they're different glorified battles. There aren't 3 places doing the same gimmick, with different levels. You could have also had character opportunities here. This big sprawling city has Trevor's house. What if I could spot the other rivals doing things as more of Lumios is unlocked? Shauna could be shopping, Tierno could be like street performing or something. Serena and Calum could be store mannequins, but they're probably too lifeless. Overall, this is kind of a smaller gripe on regional design because it is just about one city, and the rest of the region is nice and varied. It's cool that a place like Geosenge is permanently changed by the events of the story. Riding Pokemon in various places is a cool touch, even if it's very limited, and roller skating is fun. The cathedral-esque stained glass in the league is cool. A lot of smaller regional touches do land, but like most Pokemon games, they're just not very frequent. But the 3D Pokemon games do have another aspect that tries to make them unique: battle gimmicks. Mega Pokemon alone are pretty cool. One thing the Pokemon team excels at is the actual creature design. So having a battle gimmick that enables the team to come up with new creative designs for old Pokemon is awesome. Here's a tier list going strictly by how much I like the designs. I do wish that they gave them more to useless and forgettable Pokemon than Pokemon that were already cool and strong. Like, yeah, Mega Kangaskhan and Mega Mawile were absurdly broken, but at least they can be on a list other than a list of the most forgettable Pokemon. My main issue with Mega Evolution as a Kalos gimmick is that it doesn't feel involved enough with the Kalos region. The lore behind Mega Evolution presented in X and Y is that it comes from the power of the ultimate weapon, the legendary Pokemon imbuing power in special stones. But the ultimate weapon lore feels like something I could pick up and put in any prior region. It is just a giant energy cannon, a deer, and a falcon. It's not very French to my knowledge. It all just doesn't feel attached to Kalos, and it makes Kalos less memorable even if the gimmick itself is pretty cool. Contrast that to Z-moves. While Z-moves have their own issues, they are very attached to Alola. Yes, their power also comes from their legendary deities, but those deities feel far more tied to the Hawaiian inspiration of the region, hence why I'm even referring to them as deities. The island trial, and hence the entire experience of Alola, revolves around the Z crystals. It doesn't feel like you could pick those elements up and just put them somewhere else. Dynamaxing in Galar is something that also kinda just draws power from the air. But here, we can see the effects that such a gimmick has on the region. They build these giant stadiums for the kaiju-like Pokémon battles that occur. Battling is more of a spectator sport because of Dynamaxing. If you removed Dynamaxing from Galar, the stadiums and the fan enthusiasm would not make as much sense. The gimmick and the region are intertwined. It feels like you cannot have one without the other. If you remove Mega Pokemon from Kalos, do you really lose anything? It's Sycamore's research, I guess, that he passes down to the gang. It motivates parts of the incredibly bland story, but aside from just dialogue, the game doesn't even seem interested in showing me the gimmick. There are only 3 trainers you fight over the course of the entire main game that use Megas. 3! If it's this cool and hot new Kalos thing, then why isn't it shown to me, the player, how cool it is? Why do I get 2 Mega options to just steamroll through everyone else until Lysander and Diantha finally show up with them? The region as a whole and the experience it puts you through does not seem interested in Mega Evolution, aside from just using it in dialogue. It feels like just you, Sycamore, and Karina care about it at all. And speaking about you and your Mega advantage, that ties us nicely into... I have a lot of thoughts about difficulty in Pokemon games. To sum that up as quick as I can, it's just rock, paper, scissors with monsters. It's not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard in the regular games. If it's single battles, you don't really have to predict anything the opponent does. You just need to know the type chart and you're good from there. I personally do not mind easier Pokemon games. I'd rather they err on that side rather than becoming incredibly hardcore and have massive difficulty spikes like a certain game-ruining Elite Four I could mention. But let's put that stuff aside and just take what X and Y presents at face value. The boss battles of Gym Leaders and Elite Four are incredibly easy no matter how you slice it. As mentioned, they do not use Mega Pokemon. You already have an advantage with your Mega Lucario and Mega Kanto starter. But the bosses also just do not have good enough teams. Olympia and Wolfric as the last 2 gym leaders are the most egregious. They should not have just 3 Pokemon. It is rare for the 7th gym leader to have less than 4. Yeah, there are weird exceptions like Tate and Liza double battle, but 3 is just too little, especially when you have Megas and they don't. Wolfric as the 8th and final gym leader having just 3 Pokemon is ridiculous. Sure, they got away with it in Unova, but here in Kalos, we're talking about the Ice type, the most fragile type in the game, where the player has a guaranteed Mega that has 2 type advantages over it.
Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
Wolfric is a complete pushover. He's also fought after the last Lysander battle, meaning the game has expected you to beat a boss that uses 4 Pokemon, and a boss that uses Mega Evolution. I have proven that I can beat a team of 4, a diverse team of 4 with multiple types. Why are we going backwards with a team of 3 that can be breezed through with a single fire or fighting type? And then the Elite Four, true to their name I guess, only use 4 Pokemon. Only other time this has happened is the Unova Elite Four, whom I can say you at least need to fight twice before facing the champion, so I can kind of excuse it. but 4 Pokemon for the Elite Four is nonsense. Lance, Agatha, and Flint all had insane limitations on their types, but still managed to have 5 Pokemon come hell or high water. I'm surprised Flint didn't use a water type, in fact. The Kalos Elite Four have options in the Kalos dex to use, and they just don't. And this isn't even talking about move sets. Sure, I don't expect every Pokemon of every major boss to have great counter coverage like Winona's Altaria having Earthquake, but I expect 4 moves. I expect a Mawile to have a stab move and not double dip on a type that doesn't even counter types Mawile would be scared of. What is this set, man? We're just throwing out a 380 base stat total Pokemon in the 6th gym? Man, it sure would be nice if we had, some sort of difficulty setting in Pokemon so that each person can have the experience they want. If you want to struggle through tons of tedious grinding, wasting hours of your life to feel like you're finally achieving something, you could do that. If I want to breeze through the game and get through a nice, cozy experience, I could do that. Be nice if we could each have our way. Oh wait, Kalos did just that. The experience share. This version of the experience share is one of my favorite parts of the Gen 6 games. When it's on, all of your Pokemon get experience from a battle. It doesn't just split experience between the active and held Pokemon like in previous games. This magic machine creates extra experience out of thin air. And the best part? It's completely optional. This is what I've been wanting. The 8-year-olds can go over there and play with teams that they like or whatever, while over at the big kids table, the 12-year-olds can care about team composition and moveset coverage for their story adventure. This is a difficulty setting. It's not perfect, because if you feel like you're over-leveled and turn the EXP share off, it'll take some time for the game to catch back up to you, and vice versa. The other issue becomes in what direction that difficulty slider is. Does having the EXP share on make easy mode and off make normal mode? Or does having the EXP share on make normal mode and off make hard mode? Did you forget who the target audience of this game is? If you stick with the same team of 6 with the EXP share on, not only will you face off with trainers with less than 6 Pokemon, but you will greatly outlevel them by the end of the game. The game seems designed around it being on for the first maybe 3 gyms, and then designed around it being off afterwards. Is what I would say if my footage backed it up at all. I was on par with the opponent's levels more often than I thought while I was playing through it with the EXP share on. I think it's just because I was skipping a lot of wild encounters and trainers and all that. So yeah, the footage does not back up the idea that X and Y is easy just from the EXP share giving you extra levels. My champion fight did come down to last hit, probably just because I didn't use Megas. Now, that aside, the EXP share still is a difficulty setting. However, it felt like they didn't know how to dictate the game around the 2 different experiences it offered. And so, like most good things, they scrapped it. Instead, opting for making grinding less tedious and putting every player on the same experience growth and designing the difficulty around that singular path of shared experience. A damn shame.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
Thematically, the Kalos gyms are awesome. From Grant's rock climbing setup to Ramos's backyard jungle gym to Valerie's dollhouse, the gyms are set up as cool places to navigate. The issue is that's all you do, navigate them. 6 out of the 8 gyms in X and Y are just static mazes that you go through. Just reach the gym leader. It doesn't matter at a point if I'm rock climbing, vine swinging, or warp paneling. I'm moving from tile A to tile B in a maze. There are no puzzles throughout many of the gym interiors. No way for you to interact with the mazes. An apt comparison for good gym puzzles is Platinum. In those gyms, you're rotating the Sunny Shore gears, bruising up the Veilstone punching bags, or mowing down Snowpoint snowballs with your face. Probably should have had a Guardian helmet for that one. Even the Hardhome Gym Maze has some wrinkles in it with the darkness and flashlights. It's not just the way you move being altered. Platinum has 2 static gym puzzles, Oreburg and Canalave. X and Y has only 2 dynamic gym puzzles with Lumios quizzes and the Snowbell rotating ice squares. And the Snowbell rotating ice squares are, in fact, sick. The final issue I'm going to bring up about X and Y is something that only arises with the power of hindsight, with seeing how X and Y have slotted into the Pokémon franchise as a whole. That issue is how X and Y set the standard for the 3D era of games. A standard of underachievement, rushed deadlines, and nostalgia. X and Y is the generation to follow up Black and White. While Black and White have many problems in my opinion, I cannot deny the ambition that game had. The ambition to try a real story for the first time, create tons of new Pokemon, and have regional inspiration outside of Japan. That combination allows Black and White to feel like a truly unique experience. And now we're following that up. We enter this new 3D space full of new possibilities, new adventures, new Pokemon to battle and collect. You set off ready to see what new experience you're gonna have here in Kalos, and the first static, guaranteed encounter you get is a fucking Pidgey. Are you excited to go on a grand new adventure and see a bunch of new Pokemon? Great. On the first route, there's only like a 60% chance you'll see a new Pokemon. On the second route, it is 30%. On the third, it's 40%. This isn't unique to X and Y, the other 3D games partake in similar encounter rates, but it all serves to make it difficult for X and Y to really stand out, when the creatures you battle with and collect are all ones that you've seen before. Sure, we're now at a point where it has been a long time since you could use these Pokemon, and now we can see their beautiful 3D models. But it still feels like the game tries too much to bring you in with stuff you already know and Pokemon you have already used. The new Kalos Pokemon feel hidden away. Helioptile is the rare encounter in its route. Carbink is the rare encounter in its cave. They are buried down by older Pokemon you've already seen in previous games. There are many such cases. Hawlucha, Inkay, Dedenne, Gumi, the list goes on and on.
What a sick joke!
There are some routes where you can't even find a Kalos native Pokemon. You are guaranteed to get a popular past generation Pokemon in Lucario. Guaranteed to get a Kanto starter. Accounting for your Kalos starter, that leaves you with 3 slots to maybe fill out with Kalos Pokemon if you can even find them. The game does not seem interested in showing you new things, rather than invigorate the old things. The tough thing is, I understand why Pokemon operates in this nostalgia-centric way. When you are a massive media franchise, you don't really need to worry about the new, younger demographic. You are on their TV screens, you are in their toy aisles, monitoring their sleep schedule. Why are they doing that one again, man?
Money!
It's effortless. There are so many ways to get into the Pokemon pipeline outside of the games themselves. So when making the games, why not pivot to retaining the older demographic? And what's the best drug to keep those fellas coming back? Nostalgia. Make sure that they know we can put their beautiful baby Pidgey in 3D. Why make new, interesting games when the older demographic can get that elsewhere? When they can turn to a Persona, an Amori, or an Undertale? How are you going to serve up a Fire Emblem 3 Houses level experience on your ridiculous game every year timeline? Why bother being the deep, nuanced and flavorful meal a good game can offer when you can be the chicken noodle soup. And the world needs chicken noodle soup, something people come back to for a sense of comfort. And X and Y now feels like the first game where the aim was to be chicken noodle soup, to favor style and familiarity over substance. It ends in a bizarro compromise where the marketing can be more nostalgia focused to try to keep the older audiences engaged, but the actual games themselves still have to be geared towards the younger audience so that they are not turned away. You still have to be colorful, you still have to be easy, and you need to explain everything in the slowest tutorials possible. So even though the marketing tries to get the older audience more involved, they are less likely to like the direction Pokemon is going in as a whole. At the time, having so many reappearing Pokemon throughout the Kalos region probably sounded like a really good idea, where the younger generation hadn't seen those Pokemon yet. So it's new to them, and to the older people, it's nostalgic and cool to see Charizard in a 3D model with maybe a much more washed out orange than we would have liked. But then when you evaluate the game in retrospect, you realize it doesn't have too much new to it in ways of Pokemon. You really feel the limited decks that Kalos was working with when you play these games back. Of course, the stance of everyone who works on a Pokemon game differs greatly, especially when 3 companies all co-own the Pokemon company. But it's certainly hard for a development team to put in substance when a new game gets cranked out nearly every single year. When growing up, I don't think we really cared that Pokemon games were releasing so often. We just needed to beg our parents to buy them at Best Buy. But now we can put into perspective how ridiculously hard it is to make a single game, let alone run your company at a pace that can do one every year. And now those yearly releases don't include just reskinning a year-old game with minor upgrades so people buy the game a third time. From the year X and Y came out, 2013, to now, there have only been 2 years without a main Pokemon release. A similar time frame leading up to X and Y, from 2001 to 2013, there were 5 years without a release. As mentioned, there are a lot of chefs in the kitchen when it comes to pushing Pokemon in this direction, when deciding what the fate of the franchise is. You know, for keeping up that yearly schedule, outsourcing sounded like a good idea. Until it wasn't. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say the devs lack passion or anything, or that they look forward to making a game that doesn't live up to what they want it to be. You want to see a game completely bereft of passion, you can boot up Pokemon TCG Live. And there you will see what actual incompetence and organizational hubris gets you.
I literally have game, but the game bugged out on me. How do I get rid of this?
Yeah, even with this patch, Live is still lagging behind PTCGO quite a bit.
Now, sitting here after words and words, pages of why I don't like X and Y, I understand that it's completely biased. When a franchise goes on for as long as Pokemon has, there's more than just game quality to influence your perspective on any single entry. They're all happening during different phases of your life, when you may not be engaged with Pokemon as a whole. For me, the main way I consumed Pokemon as a kid was through the anime, and a bit through Black and White I decided I didn't like the anime. It was also a point where a lot of my friends were dropping Pokemon games and not playing them anymore. It was expected at this time that I move on. Everyone's playing the Halos, the Assassin's Creeds, and the like. So my favor with Pokemon and how I engage with the franchise as a whole diminished when X and Y eventually came out. It eventually got reinvigorated by the time Generation 7 rolled around, because I had friends that played it as well, so that part kind of found itself once again. And that leaves X and Y to just exist in this trough of my general interest in Pokemon. And because of that, I am probably much more critical of its flaws. I am probably much less accepting of its strengths. And so now with ZA on the horizon, I'm excited to see what more can be done with Kalos. And I'm excited to see the people that really wanted another Kalos game because they enjoyed X and Y to have an online presence to show me why they enjoyed this game while I did not. I don't expect those people who enjoy X and Y to still be here. Spend like an hour of me shit talking a game you like. I mean, I wouldn't have sticked around either. But if you did, feel free to voice why I am completely full of it and biased.